imagine walking into a bakery, right? You have a craving. You just want a single slice of cake.
Just one piece.
Exactly. You're standing there, wallet in hand, and you are ready to pay a premium for that one piece. But the baker looks at you and says, nope, you have to buy the entire 5-tier wedding cake just to get a bite.
Which is, I mean, totally absurd.
Right. You'd probably walk right out thinking they were crazy. But today is May 31st, 2026, and that is exactly what is happening to the entire North American housing and travel market right now.
Oh, for sure. The 2026 World Cup is, well, it's officially looming over us.
Yeah, spanning 16 cities across 3 countries.
Okay.
But today we're not doing sports analysis. We're skipping the group stages and penalty kicks, and we are doing a deep dive into the massive logistical shockwave that is hitting the continent.
Because a mega event of this unprecedented scale, it really transcends sports. It operates as a continent-wide stress test of municipal infrastructure.
Yeah.
You're taking systems that are optimized for a very specific daily equilibrium, and you're just dropping the equivalent of a small, highly active city directly on top of them.
Just boom, right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're demanding immediate shelter, movement, services. I mean, it fundamentally distorts the supply chain of these metropolitan areas.
Okay, let's unpack this, because whether you're, holding tickets to a match, or maybe you're just trying to plan a routine summer business trip, or even just attempting to navigate your own city for your normal commute, the normal rules of travel and accommodation have been completely rewritten.
Completely thrown out the window.
Yeah. So our mission today is to be your shortcut to understanding and surviving this new reality. And I think we need to start with the most visceral distortion, which is housing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you can't find a bed, the rest of your travel plans basically disintegrate. You can't attend a client meeting or a match if you're sleeping in your rental car.
No, you really can't. The bedrock of any logistical grid is secure accommodation. And right now, the numbers we're seeing in the sources are exhibiting structural shifts that we rarely see outside of massive demographic migrations.
The raw numbers are just staggering.
They really are. I mean, in Vancouver, hotel rates are currently up over 200%.
200%.
Yeah. And even with those astronomical prices, projections show that more than 15,000 fans per day will have absolutely no lodging available to them during the peak tournament periods.
There's nowhere to sleep.
Exactly. Toronto is sitting at an 80% premium over historical levels. And down in Mexico, the markets are experiencing rate inflation 3 to 5 times their historical averages.
And what's wild is that inflation in Mexico, it isn't just a matter of, hospitality groups arbitrarily raising prices. We're seeing the entire residential housing matrix basically drafted into the tourism sector.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism driving that inflation. The actual ecosystem of the housing market is morphing.
How so?
Well, in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, we are tracking a rapid, active shift of long-term housing inventory into the short-term rental market.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, property owners are they're analyzing the event demand and realizing they can generate a year's worth of traditional rental yield in just a matter of weeks.
So they basically pull the apartment off the traditional lease market, buy some furniture, and list it for tourists.
Exactly.
Which removes that long-term inventory from local residents. That creates this huge ripple effect of scarcity that drives up the baseline rent for everyone, not just the people flying in for the games.
That's spot on. And that scarcity, it actually brings us back to your bakery analogy.
The wedding cake.
Yes, the wedding cake. Because even if you locate an available unit in this incredibly tight market, you're going to encounter the minimum stay trap. Many providers, especially in corporate housing and the short-term rental sector, they're enforcing strict 30-day minimum stay requirements.
Which is where you're forced to buy the wedding cake.
Exactly.
You only need an apartment for, say, a 3-day business conference, but they're telling you that you're required to lease it for the entire month.
Right. And it gets worse. In highly constrained markets like Vancouver and Seattle, that minimum stay is stretching to an unbelievable 90 days.
Wait, really? 90 days?
3 full months.
But why on earth would a property manager refuse a lucrative 1-week booking where they can charge a premium in favor of holding out for a 90-day lease? That feels counterintuitive.
It does. But it comes down to a combination of strict local legislation and really aggressive risk mitigation.
Okay.
See, cities like Vancouver and Seattle have implemented robust short-term rental laws over the past few years to protect their housing stock. They'll often heavily tax or outright ban weekend-to-weekend rentals.
Right, to keep places for actual residents.
Exactly. However, if a property manager leases a unit for 90 days, it is no longer legally classified as a short-term tourist rental. It becomes a standard residential or corporate lease.
Oh, so it bypasses those restrictions entirely. It's a legal loophole.
A legal loophole paired with financial strategy.
I mean, think of it like a property manager choosing between day trading and a guaranteed bond yield.
Interesting.
Managing weekend-to-weekend tourists involves really high operational friction. You've got cleaning costs, key handoffs, and the big one, the risk of unbooked days. A single unbooked Tuesday basically ruins the profit margin for that whole week.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so by locking in a 90-day corporate lease, they secure a guaranteed, low-friction, high-yield return for the entire fiscal quarter.
But that makes traditional corporate travel incredibly difficult.
Almost impossible.
Like if you're a company trying to send a small engineering team to Seattle for just a routine project this summer, you are suddenly being forced to bankroll a summer-long residency.
Yep.
And when we look at specific regional anomalies in the sources, this corporate squeeze gets even tighter. Like
Yeah.
Dallas is a prime example of this.
Oh, the Dallas anomaly is fascinating. The region's corporate housing inventory is being uniquely swallowed up by the broadcast industry. Right, because Dallas is hosting the International Broadcast Center, the IBC.
Exactly. And that means roughly 2,000 broadcast and media personnel are descending on the Metroplex for several months.
But, I mean, 2,000 people might not sound like a massive footprint for a city the size of Dallas, right?
Not if they were just booking standard double queen hotel rooms, no. But these are technical professionals and executives. They require specialized, high-end corporate housing.
Oh, they need the good stuff.
Yeah, they need properties with heavy fiber optic connectivity, 247 power redundancy, specific security perimeters. That specific demand completely hollows out the exact tier of inventory that visiting executives, consulting teams, or, transitioning families usually rely on. The supply just vanishes.
Leaving a total vacuum for legitimate supply. And, whenever a desperate market hits zero vacancy, it just opens the door to severe opportunism.
Oh, the dark side of this is really concerning.
Yeah, the sources were warning about spikes in fraudulent housing listings across these 16 cities. Because when you, as a traveler, are facing 90-day minimums and 200% price hikes, you start searching the deeper, less regulated corners of the internet.
You do. You lower your standard of skepticism.
Exactly. You see a listing that looks highly affordable, and with desperation overriding logic, you assume you found a hidden gem.
Which is terrifying. I mean,
Yeah.
arriving in an unfamiliar city with your family or your colleagues, only to discover your rented house does not exist. That is a catastrophic scenario during an event with zero backup inventory.
You literally have nowhere to go.
Right. Utilizing vetted housing providers and implementing rigorous due diligence is just an absolute necessity right now.
For sure. And this housing squeeze actually acts as the domino that knocks over a next major topic, which is the movement matrix.
The transit grid.
Yeah, transit and ground control. Because if you can't find a place to sleep near the stadium, or you just refuse to sign a 90-day lease, the logical traveler thinks, well, I'll just stay an hour or two away in the suburbs and commute in on game day.
A very common thought process.
But the sources reveal why that plan is also a total minefield. That geographic displacement mathematically guarantees a transit crisis. Public transit ridership in these host cities is projected to surge to 2 to 4 times the volume of standard commuters.
That displacement pushes tens of thousands of visitors onto regional rail and bus networks simultaneously. And people often assume public transit functionality remains static, just slightly more crowded.
Right.
But a 400% volume surge fundamentally alters the physics of moving through a metropolitan area.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this premise, though.
Sure, go ahead.
If I know a train is operating at 400% capacity, why would I willingly step into that claustrophobic nightmare? Wouldn't a logical person just rent a car, turn on the air conditioning, and sit in traffic? I mean, at least you have personal space.
It is a really tempting thought, but it completely ignores the brutal geometry of urban traffic.
What do you mean?
Well, a single train car can remove over 100 vehicles from the road grid. When you add 80,000 extra people to a stadium district, the physical square footage required for their cars simply does not exist.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, the road network enters a state of total gridlock. You wouldn't be sitting in moving traffic. You would be parked on an interstate off-ramp for 3 hours.
That sounds miserable.
It is. The train will be uncomfortably crowded, you will experience delays, and you will probably wait through several full trains before you can even board. But it is geometrically the only option that maintains forward momentum.
Which explains why municipal planners are currently racing to finish massive infrastructure upgrades. They know the baseline systems would just buckle.
Absolutely buckle.
We're seeing an accelerated push on projects like Atlanta's MARTA system upgrades, the massive LAX People Mover in Los Angeles, and the DART Silver Line down in Dallas.
The DART Silver Line is actually a perfect example of this. It's designed to connect the northern suburbs directly to the airport and transit hubs, specifically to relieve that arterial highway pressure.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, these cities are expanding platform capacity, streamlining choke points, and extending service hours late into the night because they know the train is the only viable artery left.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Before you even get to those local trains, you have to fly in. The macro-level travel gridlock is going to trigger a cascading delay effect across the entire aviation network.
Oh, the airports are going to be a real challenge.
Major hubs like Los Angeles International, JFK, O'Hare, Miami International, and Toronto Pearson are all facing severe congestion.
See, the aviation network operates on incredibly tight turnaround margins with very little slack. If an aircraft at LAX cannot push back from its gate because the tarmac is congested with, say, extra charter flights,
Right.
then the inbound flight from O'Hare has nowhere to park. That O'Hare flight holds on the runway, which delays its next scheduled departure. A regional bottleneck instantly becomes a continental delay.
So if you're flying from London to Seattle, but your connection is in Chicago, your flight might get held up simply because the airport's ground operations are saturated.
Exactly.
The strategy here from the sources is mandatory padding. Do not book a 45-minute layover anywhere in North America this summer. You need multi-hour connection buffers.
And that buffer is even more critical when crossing international borders. Travelers heading into Mexico or Canada must prepare for significantly longer immigration and customs processing times.
Is that just a staffing issue? Like, can't they just put more agents in the booths?
It is partly staffing, but it is heavily tied to biometric processing bottlenecks.
Oh, the tech can't keep up.
Right. The sheer volume of international passports hitting those digital checkpoints simultaneously, it slows down the verification networks. The infrastructure can only process so many data packets per minute, regardless of how many agents are sitting at the desks.
Wow. Okay, so you endure the airport delays, you make it through customs, you take the upgraded but heavily crowded local transit, and you are finally getting close to the stadium.
The hyperlocal environment.
Let's zoom in on that.
Yeah.
Because the illusion of convenience, this idea that you can just grab a rideshare, jump out at the stadium gates, and walk right in, that needs to be completely discarded.
Oh, totally discarded. The congestion data around the stadium districts is severe. Vehicular gridlock doesn't just start an hour before the game.
When does it start?
The models show total arterial paralysis starting 3 to 5 hours before kickoff, and it lingers for 2 to 3 hours after the match ends.
That is an 8-hour window where the roads immediately surrounding the venue are essentially non-functional.
Completely paralyzed.
And you can forget about pulling up the Uber or Lyft app for a quick escape. Pickup and drop-off areas are being severely limited and repositioned.
They have to be repositioned for security perimeters and simple pedestrian safety. I mean, you cannot have thousands of individual rideshare drivers idling in the immediate footprint of a stadium trying to ingest 80,000 fans.
It'd be chaos.
Total chaos.
Cool.
So the repositioned drop-off zones mean your app will route your driver to a designated lot that is likely a significant walking distance away from the actual venue.
So you end up paying a massive surge pricing multiplier only to be dropped off a mile away and forced to walk the rest of the way in the summer heat.
Yep.
Which loops right back to why those crowded municipal trains are actually your best bet.
The geometry of traffic.
Exactly. Okay, we have painted a rather intense picture of absolute logistical gridlock. Systems stretched to their absolute limits, astronomical housing costs, 90-day legal loopholes, 4 times the transit crowds, algorithmic border delays, and 8-hour stadium gridlock.
It's a lot to take in.
So what does this all mean? How do you, the listener, actually navigate this without losing your mind or your budget? We need a survival guide.
The primary strategy requires a fundamental shift in how we approach geographical booking. In travel logistics, we often talk about shoulder seasons, the time between peak and off-peak travel. But here, we need to utilize a geographic shoulder market.
Right. Instead of looking at time, we are looking at a map. You stop trying to breach the fortress of the city center and look to the immediate periphery.
Exactly.
For Vancouver, the sources recommend pivoting your search to Burnaby or Richmond. For Toronto, looking at Mississauga or Markham. And in Mexico City, moving outward toward Toluca or Querétaro.
You're basically identifying satellite cities that have robust commuter rail connections into the primary host city. You leverage their existing transit infrastructure while insulating yourself from the absolute peak of the center city price gouging. Yeah, you step just outside the primary blast radius of the economic shockwave, where inventory is slightly more fluid, and those 90-day minimums might drop back down to standard week-long leases.
But it isn't just about where you stay. It is heavily dependent on when you make your moves. There's a very specific timeline rule here from the experts. Any major relocations or complex travel plans must be locked in at least 6 weeks in advance.
Yes.
Why is 6 weeks the magic number?
It comes down to how dynamic pricing algorithms handle mega events. Hotels and airlines typically hold back massive blocks of inventory for VIPs, corporate sponsors, and athletic federations.
Right.
At roughly the 45-day mark, so 6 weeks out, any unsold reams in those blocks are dumped back into the retail algorithm for the general public.
So wouldn't that influx of supply actually lower the prices?
In a normal market, yes, it would. But during a mega event, the baseline inventory hits 0% much earlier than the algorithm's historical models predict.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, when that VIP block is released into a zero vacancy market, the algorithm immediately registers massive, unfulfilled consumer demand waiting on the other side. It panics and maxes out the pricing tier instantly.
Wow.
If you haven't booked before that algorithmic cliff, you lose all leverage as a consumer.
You are buying at the absolute ceiling. That's brutal. There is also a secondary timeline rule the sources emphasize, specifically regarding match days. Avoid the matrix entirely.
Oh, 100%.
If you have to travel between cities or if you're relocating a team for work, look at the tournament schedule. If there's a match happening in Los Angeles on a Tuesday, do not try to fly in or drive across town on that Tuesday. Move your plans to Monday or Wednesday.
Absolutely. Do not interact with the logistics grid when it is at maximum compression.
Just stay off the grid.
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, mitigating this disruption requires an adjustment in expectations. This is what logistical planners call flexible budgeting.
Flexible budgeting. That
Yeah.
sounds like a gentle way of saying prepare to spend more money.
It is partly financial, sure, but it is primarily a psychological adjustment. It means accepting the reality of a premiumized environment.
Right.
Every single layer of your trip is going to be infected by this event demand. The cost of the hotel is inflated. The rideshare from the airport has a surge multiplier. You might have to buy a more expensive flight routing because the direct options are saturated.
Everything just compounds.
Right. If you approach this summer expecting historical prices and normal convenience, the continuous friction will just exhaust you. Flexible budgeting means mentally accepting that friction as the new temporary baseline.
You just have to embrace the chaos, pad the schedule, and adjust your wallet accordingly. It really is a complete rewiring of how a city operates.
It really is.
So to bring it all home and recap the core takeaways for now, if you are stepping into this 2026 landscape, expect massive price surges across the board. Be prepared for those bizarre 90-day minimum stays as property managers chase guaranteed bond yield returns over day trading tourists. Anticipate transit systems operating with 4 times their normal crowds. And remember the geometry of traffic, take the train.
Take the train.
Critically, rigorously vet your housing providers to avoid the inevitable surge in desperation fraud. Look to those geographic shoulder markets we talked about, lock in your plans before the 6-week algorithmic cliff, and stay off the grid on match days.
It requires discipline, but by understanding the mechanics of these systems, you can navigate them effectively. However, looking at the data regarding Mexico, where long-term housing inventory is actively shifting into short-term rentals to capitalize on inflation that is 3 to 5 times the historical average.
Yeah.
This raises an important question for you to consider. When a month-long mega event fundamentally rewires a city's housing market to prioritize short-term tourists over its own residents, how long does it actually take for that city's housing ecosystem to return to normal once the final whistle blows?
That's the million-dollar question. Does the genie ever really go back in the bottle once property owners see those tourist profit margins?
Time will tell.
That is exactly the kind of structural hangover we will be watching long after the crowds go home. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 2026 logistical shockwave. Get your plans locked in early, stay patient on those transit lines, and as always, stay curious. We'll catch you next time.